Welcome back to Melbourne Strength Cultures podcast. Number one in the hearts, number one in the charts. Very special edition today. We have the elusive Will Berkman.
Enigma.
The Enigma. The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. What?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. Obviously, we know the story, but there are a lot of people in the industry that are interested in learning, number one, where you went on Instagram, because you just fucking
Left.
smoke bombed. But then also some of the other story. And I know you were hesitant initially, but you've sort of come around to opening up a little bit. Not that it's just going to be an open fucking diary session, but at least chatting.
Which is crazy. I actually prepared some snippets from the diary for
this
episode.
You got some?
No, but like the short of it is that I left the fitness industry.
Yeah.
And closing my Instagram account was one of the first steps I wanted to take to sort of give myself some clear air at the time. Although, like, as you know, as Charlie knows, in the time since I've closed my Instagram, I've had curious people reaching out to me by any other means they could figure out, social media, like Facebook, email, my other Instagram account, phone, through friends, just asking where I'm going. But the short of it is that I chose to leave the fitness industry, and that was sort of a decision that was a long time coming, but one that I made relatively abruptly. And obviously I didn't smoke bomb all my clients. I had a pretty open discussion with all of them and all my mentees and things about why I was choosing to leave, and then I just pulled the trigger and bailed.
Yeah.
Did you get any backlash from people initially?
That was one of the most interesting things about it. When I made the decision that, like, nah, this is what I have to do, I was really worried because I knew I was going to disappoint some people. Yeah. I had a couple of clients who were due to compete relatively soon after I left, who I said, I'll help you through to your competitions and so on. And I had a bunch of other clients who were sort of talking about long-term plans that I knew I wasn't going to see out with them. And so I was really concerned that people would be upset at me, but everybody was remarkably supportive. In fact, I didn't hear a single bad word from anyone, and I had a whole bunch of people actually offer to help me in any transition, anything else I did. Like, it was fantastically good. And so the decision to get rid of, my social media wasn't because I wanted to shelter myself from backlash or anything like that. It was more just because I wanted space. And one of the nicest things that I realized in that moment, or not in that moment, but in the days following closing that account, was that there are a whole lot of people that I interacted with a lot who, I might have liked interacting with, but who I ultimately wasn't that close with, in the sense that I had to be available to them anyway. I had people reaching out to me every single day asking me advice for, coaching or training or whatever it happened to be. And having the sense suddenly that I didn't have to be available, I didn't have to have a public face, no one had to care about what I was doing, was incredibly freeing. And the fact that people supported me in that transition was really, really good too.
Yeah. It wouldn't have been an easy decision, because I know we'd had chats about sort of some of the stuff that I'd gone through with, like, burnout, and I was lucky and fortunate enough to be in a position to pivot into more of the business role and the development of the coaches and all that sort of stuff. But it would have been a very difficult decision. You said just initially there that it was a long time coming. What do you mean by that? Is it that you had these thoughts earlier?
Yeah, I mean, even if I think about where I started in the fitness industry, it was an accident. Yeah. Like, pretty much every step of further investment in the fitness industry that I ever took came about accidentally. I remember my first powerlifting coach, Emir Fazeli, he said to me probably 6 months before I started personal training, he said, if he opened a new Adonis gym, would I want to coach at it? And I said, no, I never want to be a personal trainer. Yeah. And then I had this prick of a boss at the gym that I was working at, and I was like, fuck, I got to leave here. I'm allowed to swear, aren't I?
Yeah, fucking yeah.
I had this prick. Yeah. I had this prick of a boss.
You said you weren't going to call anyone out. Now you're calling out your old boss, mate.
Oh, no, he can get fucked. He was a dickhead. And so I was like, I have to leave this gym. And somebody hit me up and said, well, we have an open personal training slot. Do you want to take it? And I was like, all right. So I started personal training on a whim, and I did that through my master's degree, and left to go traveling for a few months, thinking that I'd come back and get what I thought was a real job. And when I got back, I was offered all these work opportunities in fitness again, and I was like, oh, I better do that, because I'd realized I loved it. I wanted to do more, and I did that and sort of accidentally became quite successful in it again. And I mean, like, it wasn't entirely accidental, but I'd sort of continually invested myself in something, but I was always curious about doing other things too. Like, I'm interested in lots of stuff that isn't fitness. And more I would talk to my friends who have careers that are interesting to me, or who work in other fields that are interesting to me, and the problems they were solving and just the stuff they were doing sounded interesting to me. And I was like, I feel like I'm playing in the kiddie pool here, no disrespect to fitness in saying that, but like, it's the place that I'm comfortable. I felt like I'd kind of mastered what I was doing, and I had this urge to go elsewhere. Yeah. So there was that overlaid on the fact that the last couple of years for me have just been like one emotional hit after another. Well, not even COVID, because, people who know Lift Performance Center, which is where I was at before I went to Steed and then fully online. So, I was working at, I'd say, the best gym in Sydney with a bunch of people who like I loved, inspired me, and we basically had the rug pulled out from under us. We got a message at like 10:30 at night one day from the owner saying the gym's shut effective immediately.
I actually read that message the other day.
Yeah.
Alex gave me the full rundown on it. It was like that night, 10:30, next morning shut.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
So like I was asleep when the message came through. So I actually got that message at 5 the next morning and I had to message my 6 o'clock client, don't come to the gym.
It's shut.
We can't get in.
And so we had this like amazing location, like really well equipped, central, where I could service powerlifting clients and general population clients. Like couldn't have been better for my business. It reflected well upon me because I was working with people like Tulloch, like Rawdon, all these guys who I loved being around and who helped me develop as a coach. That was taken away in one go. So I lost that sense of community and that sense of sort of purpose in my work and had to reshape everything. And I had this immediate thought of, I don't want my business to ever be dependent on somebody else again. So that was one of the first times I really doubled down on online. I was sort of running a hybrid model at that point. And when that came around, I was like, no, my business has to be able to stand with no other gym. And then I found a home at Steed, and I love the people from Steed, but it was never the same as Lift for me, and it was always the thing I did in addition to my online business rather than a core of what I did. So I didn't have that sense of being embedded in a community there. Then COVID comes along, which meant that the powerlifting community in Australia wasn't able to compete, so I felt removed from that. All of my clients, and I had probably 60 or 70% of my clients who were also personal trainers, all of them had to abruptly change their training goals, like all shit that you guys understand. But, layered on top of that, I had these people who their businesses had evaporated from under them. So I had like 2 years of conversations that were, if not like relentlessly negative, at least not as positive as they used to be. And, like as a coach, the emotional kickback you get is that sense that your clients are fulfilled in working with you. And I'm sure that mine still were. And I had really deep relationships with lots of them, but it wasn't the same in that way. And certainly our relationship wasn't as tangible because I wasn't seeing them in person as much. I wasn't going to competitions with them, all of that. Then obviously like the Powerlifting Australia fiasco.
It actually did just keep rolling, didn't it?
It got shitter and shitter. And like
it was just fucking bam, bam.
Yeah, and then when I'd worked for like a year to get my mentorship set up, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going to make some differences to coaches' lives. And literally the day the mentorship started, we went back into our next lockdown.
That happened to me.
And so I had all these coaches who were like, this is sick content. I can't wait to apply it. But they weren't getting to do it. I was like, fuck, this is just shit house. And so, it wasn't shit house. It was actually like, it was honestly one of the best things I did in my professional life to run it. But like, it was just a constant stream of kind of shit.
The timing of it all, yeah. It's actually funny you say that. My first CDP was March 23rd, 2020. Was day one. And that was the day that everything, the whole fucking Australia, ScoMo on the thing, just bam. These industries are closed. And it was like, and I was stressing balls.
Because you were public enemy number one. If you're a gym in Melbourne during COVID.
Not then you weren't. About 8 months into it, they just wanted us shut. I don't know what was going on. They did not want us open.
The first lockdown was fine because it was all like the whole of Australia was in it together, and there was like that sense of the ads onto we're in this together, whatever. After that, everyone else opened up, and then for some Victoria just kept. And we just we were, and we just kept getting fucked and shut and shut. You can edit it, beep it, whatever you want. Shut, and then everyone else is open, so it was tough for us. We were, that was the worst part, watching you guys or you other states being open, doing things, and we were just miserable. This guy was bad. It was bad.
But it's so uncanny that literally it was the same thing. And I come back to it because I resonate so much with the whole thing, because if I didn't have all the other stuff, I would have left.
Well, this was
even with the mentorship and whatever, yeah.
Well, this was a discussion I had with you right towards the very end, where I had realised through that process that I didn't want to just be coaching. And like, I always knew that I didn't want to be just coaching, because even though I loved it, I was interested in too much stuff to spend all of my time with athletes, and I'm not extroverted enough to be like fulfilled trying to be close with 50 people at a time. It's really hard. But as I was building out more and more of my systems to scale, I hit this point where I was like, if you had asked me in 2019, what is like my mission statement in fitness, I'd have said, I want to enhance people's experiences through fitness. I want them to learn stuff. I want them to be happy in themselves, make friends. I want them to feel like enriched in their understanding of their body by training, all of this cool shit. Like all the things that makes me love training, and I still do. And at that point, at the start of 2022, my answer would have been literally, I just want to get myself out of here.
Yeah.
So I was like building on systems to take on employees. You know, I was adding an extra mentorship course that I was going to just leave as open access so that I could have steady revenue from it. And I was like, fuck, the only thing motivating me to do this is to stop coaching.
It's an out clause, yeah.
And like, if I'm going to take on employees, I don't think it's morally right for me to take somebody on as
that
my
was the
dependent
conversation we had, yeah.
and be like, like, basically, I'm just giving you the shit that I don't want to do because I'm not that invested in this project.
Yeah, there's something to delegation, but then there's something else to just like, hey man, take everything.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, no. Like at that point, like I've got to be out because I'm not passionate about the job that I'm doing, and I'm professional enough to want to actually be there for my clients if I'm going to be there. I don't want to actually look after my employees if I'm going to take them on. And I've still got all these pull factors saying, let's go do something else. And like, you know, at the end I was miserable. Like the day that I chose to pull the pin, I was sitting down. I used to do my weekly check-ins on a Monday. So everybody gets their check-in email on a Friday, comes in by Monday morning, and I get back to them. And I would give everybody like a vlog style response, something I picked up from Bryce that I really liked, because you can get across like so much information. It can be really personal. And so you basically like turn into a pen pal for your clients. And I would make notes as they spoke and then speak back to those points and then just like summarize the important stuff in a document. And I found myself on that particular Monday unable to get through a response to anybody because I'd be so distracted by these thoughts of like, what if I was doing anything other than this? And like my palms were sweating and I had like my heart beating out of my chest. I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. And so between every client, I was taking myself outside and standing on the balcony and just like chilling for a little bit.
Grounding. You
know, because I was like just so on edge. And at that point, I was like, this is intolerable. Like, I'm not going to sit through this for months and see if it gets better when, like, it's already this bad.
Yeah.
And so I was done.
We interrupt this program for a word from our sponsors, the fantastic Get Going. We know a lot of personal trainers follow this podcast and subscribe and listen. Thank you very much for doing so. However, we also know that the career of a personal trainer can sometimes be short-lived, and a lot of careers go to die on the gym floor, struggling to find clients and find leads, dealing with marketing and sales, all these skill sets that you didn't subscribe to when you started your career in the gym as a personal trainer. And this is where Get Going come in. At Get Going, they are dedicated with helping the development of personal trainers' careers. They are looking for personal trainers to join their ranks and receive full support and guidance from a dedicated team of mentors, as well as a full sales and marketing team to guaranteed leads on your doorstep. If you're interested in working for Get Going and actually starting a career in health and fitness, you can find it through the first link in the description box down below, or you can head to www.getgoingpt.com.au/careers. And did you have another mentorship running? Was this at the same time as you were like trying to do I do a second one? Oh,
so
that's right.
That was actually really fortunate. This was about 2 weeks before it was due to start, and I had about 15 signups at the time. And again, I thought they'd be really annoyed because like a lot of them had made a pretty substantial down payment. They've obviously planned their 6 months of education or something around this. And all of them as well were really supportive. You know, obviously I refunded their money. Wish I hadn't, by the way, at this point. But no, I refunded all their money, and I gave them a pretty clear explanation of this is where I'm going and why. Yeah. One or two came back with just a couple of questions, but everybody wished me well. It was fine. But I'm really glad, and I think that was one of the other things that pushed me out the door is I was like, it was going to start on Valentine's Day. I was like, if I get to Valentine's Day, I'm committed for 3 more months because there's no way I'd walk out midway through it. I just couldn't do that. And in my head, I was like, there's no way I can tolerate this feeling until June.
Yeah, you know? No doubt. I think it sounds like you definitely made the right decision because it would have been a an onslaught of
I mean, like
grind.
Yeah, I had some pretty low points at the back end of last year where I just thought I could kick the can, but at that point I was like, no.
Yeah, because I've buffered some questions like, "Oh, where's Will?" and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, he's." I just say indefinite break. I haven't told anyone the full story of it all, but and in having conversations with other people asking me about like what's going on, blah blah blah. It's actually quite common that people have career changes, and really like the sunk cost fallacy kind of plays into it a little bit with people just endeavoring for God knows how long, just rolling with it, but. It's really common that people like 10 years into something are just like, you know what? This is sort of, I think I'm going to move on, go do teaching, go do whatever, or leave. Like it really is common. And a lot of our friends that are not in the industry have already done it. It's actually...
Well, I mean, I've got like lots of thoughts about the value of change. But as far as like changing careers goes, I think the difference is in fitness. We think of ourselves as just being fitness people. And so leaving the industry is hard. Like if you work in a bank and you're an account manager...
Yeah, you don't think of yourself as a...
Yeah, you're not like, I have to be a banker for your whole life. And like, fuck, I hope not. Like, 'cause that's going to be me soon. Next time I'm on the Melbourne Strength College podcast, I'll be fucking fat.
Finance.
You know, I'll have rosacea.
Banker.
Finance Burke on fucking...
I'll have a fucking puffer jacket on or some shit. But no, like, you don't think of yourself as like glued to that profession. You're like, oh, I have some skills, they're generalizable, and if I don't like this, I can change career paths. And I think a lot of fitness people just think, well, actually, all I know is like squats and counting to 10. And it's just like, I mean, sometimes it's true, sadly, but like, but on the whole, it's like, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And I think like you can actually break out of that. You can do other things. Most people change careers. And most people start personal training when they're fucking 20 because they're obsessed with themselves and exercise and don't really want to be doing it when they're 50 or 60, right? So for most people, it's inevitable that you're going to have to transition careers one way or another. And you either do it within fitness because you've been working hard and have a long-term vision, or you're going to have to leave. And if you get to the point where you want to do it, then I don't see why you would stay around and be miserable and shit at your job when you could change.
Absolutely. You talk about like transferable skills and stuff. What do you think have been some of the strengths of obviously working for yourself, but like that you've built and developed that you think like your next steps and whatever, like when you're building out your resume? Will Berkman's, I don't even know how to make a resume.
Oh, that
what
was
do you
the
do?
most fucking...
Yeah, what do you do? Or is it all on LinkedIn now? Like,
well, it is on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is... I'm going to post this on LinkedIn, but I'm still going to say it. LinkedIn is such a wank. It's so shit, man. Like, you spend all your time networking and, like, I'll get rejection letters for jobs, and sometimes it's from a company that I would actually like to work for. They do really interesting stuff, or, like, they sound great. And, you know, you write somebody a message on LinkedIn saying, like, hey, unfortunately, I was unsuccessful in applying for this job. I'd love to stay connected because I'm so interested in what you guys are doing. Like, fuck off. And then you follow them and like, people are posting stuff on LinkedIn, often that's quite helpful or career advice. Some of it's just bullshit. It's the same as in fitness when people share their, like, what they eat in a day. No one cares. They're just doing it to be relevant. But people go around and like stuff and comment, like, congratulations on other people's posts and shit because you know that recruiters read the comments.
And they'll see the,
So it's like, it's exactly like people on Instagram posting thirst traps on their stories, except you're doing it for a career. It's such a fucking wank. But anyway, I didn't know how to build out a resume either. And I was like, my resume is going to be like 1 line long, which is like self-employed for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like lit. But my sister is actually, fortunately for me, really good at that shit. Because she works with this big organization where she basically helps scientists pitch for roles and pitch to work in commercial projects and stuff. So I cracked the shits out of her so hard because I was getting so frustrated by it. But I had her over one day and we basically just nutted out like resume stuff for hours.
Yeah.
So ended up putting a good one together. Your question was transferable skills. So
I forgot what the question was.
No, mate, I'm right
Remember
on it.
that.
Like what would I put down?
Well,
as like the skills that
I've applied for a bunch of roles that are like either account management or customer success style roles. That can mean almost anything, and those two can basically mean each other. But when you read the job descriptions for them, it'll often be things like you've got to form strong and trusting relationships where you end up a trusted advisor to someone. You need to be able to identify the needs of the person that you're working with or their specific goals, their barriers to success, and employ some strategic planning to get them there. Yeah. You need to communicate a plan to them to engineer buy-in. You need to monitor them to make sure that they're not at risk of churn, which is quitting. And if they are, put in interventions to renew their commitment to the project. And then, you know, you may have to upskill them or educate them on like ways to maximize the value they experience with your products. It's exactly coaching.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I've done business-to-business consultation. You read things where they're like, you need to make training materials or education materials to people. You need to tell stories with data or get practical insights and convey it to people. It's exactly all the things you do in coaching. And one of the hard things sometimes is selling that to people because, you know, if you're working or if you're talking to a recruiter who works for a company, like their KPI is basically just fill roles.
Yeah,
and so their perfect candidate is somebody who comes in and says, I did this exact role at another company, because they can go, great, that's safe and defensible, let's talk to them. So you do have to kind of sell it a little bit. And, you know, I write a cover letter that says, basically, I've done all the things you're asking for in a different context. Here's how. And, you know, I know that I don't have experience in your industry, but I'm obviously a fast learner. And, like, you throw things like that out there, not everyone will bite. Like, I get rejection letters at the moment from companies I can't even remember applying for because I've done so many. But occasionally they do. And when they do, often one of the reasons they want to talk to you is they say, well, you know, I ran my own business successfully, so I'm obviously capable of being passionate about something. I have a generalist skill set. Like, a lot of people are very narrowly trained, whereas particularly if you're in a smaller company, they're looking for people who can work cross-functionally, who can sort of have an idea of what's the strategic vision that we're all trying to accomplish here. You know, people who are happy to get their hands dirty in product or doing just random shit on their day-to-day. And if I say, well, I'm used to doing literally every single thing that my business has to do to keep it going, and doing so efficiently and still building in enough space to build out new products, you know, week by week, then that's very attractive.
Absolutely.
So in the right context, I'm pretty attractive. In the wrong context, I'm useless. Like, there's certain jobs I'm never going to get, and certain companies that don't want me. But like,
have you rolled the dice on anything random? Just like,
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I pitched myself for a couple of really high-level positions. I think I tried to position myself as like I think it was like the program manager for APJ, which is like, I think it's Australia, Pacific, Japan, or Asia Pacific and Japan. Australia, Pacific, and Japan. Anyway, I basically tried to pitch myself as like literally like in charge of a couple 100 people, and like didn't get a response for that. But I spoke to a recruiter a couple of days ago at a venture capital firm, and we were talking, and he said, you know what, you'd be a great COO.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, oh yeah, that was my response.
Top.
I was like, yeah, dog, I don't know about that, because like, you know, it took me weeks to figure out what an account manager even is, and I'm trying to apply for these jobs. So I'm like, there's no way that you should put me in charge of because a COO basically helps coordinate the work of everybody else, and just the reason that he said I'd be a good one is because you need to have a generalist mindset. You need to have a like good strategic thinking mindset. You need to be somebody who can get things done quicker than expected while still doing them well. But you actually have to understand the strategic ecosystem to do it. And I was like, I don't know the difference between a sales development representative and a business development representative. I don't know what an account manager is. I don't know what a customer success manager is. I don't know any of that shit. You know, I don't know like fucking anything. But down the track, it might be the type of thing that I actually
you can evolve into or something.
Yeah. But for now, like, I need to find a balance between being like enough of a shit kicker that it's inconsequential that I don't know what I'm doing, but not starting so far down the ladder that I'm underselling myself, because I have got plenty of experience. I'm more competent than most people at most things.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the tenure of working for yourself, there's just something about it. Like you just get you're forced to learn things, even things you don't even know you should be learning. You just start learning, and it's a skill set that I would feel that most people would be interested in. But then, it's a tough ask.
Well, then it's almost like they would go for the safe option. So like you said, they're going to choose
those words you said, repeatable and defense.
Yeah. Like defensible hire.
Yeah. Like you can,
you would be a little bit of a risk, and they'd look at you on paper. They're like, oh, this guy hasn't worked in the industry, done something else. Yeah.
Yeah. But, fuck, what were you said something that really stuck with me. I can't remember.
I don't know, learning a skill set or something.
Shit like that. Whatever. Like point is, it's hard to get a job.
It's tough. LinkedIn is fucking
LinkedIn
odd. It's an odd place.
But this is going on LinkedIn.
Get us on LinkedIn. How many interviews have you sat so far?
That's confidential.
Yeah.
But
Is
no.
it, that is confidential.
But I'll tell you.
Am I not allowed to ask that?
No, you're allowed to ask, but I think that this is how inexperienced I am. I feel like when I get to the point that somebody's making me an offer, if it doesn't sound like other people are interested in me, then they've really got me over a barrel. So I want to be able to walk in and be like, look, bro, I've knocked back 20 jobs. Why should I accept yours? But like, really, I've interviewed for 5 or 6 places in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And of them, there were only a few where I wanted to progress it.
Yeah.
And of them, 2 wanted to progress it. And I'm due to talk to them again quite soon.
Yep.
And then a couple of others I haven't heard back from, but I'm a little bit ambivalent about as well. But, you know, the delay time between when you apply and when you get accepted or rejected can be ages. Yeah. Like, I wasn't joking when I've said I've gotten rejection stuff for things that I don't remember applying for because it was 6 weeks ago. So there's a whole lot more pending. But at the moment, there's a couple that I'm pursuing more seriously.
It's a whole new world out there. Would you go back to study anything or like...
You know,
I actually have that one first. I was going to say, how did because you've got a master's of dietetics.
Yeah.
You were saying you just fumbled into sort of positions and roles and just sort of kept developing in the industry. Like, how do you just fumble into a master's of dietetics?
Well, that's another story. So I'm not joking. That was an accident. So I was doing exercise science, and that was an accident. So when I left school, I had my uni preferences. And they were like exercise science, psychology, law, commerce, medicine.
Just a broad spread.
Literally everything. And what they tell you to do is put them in the order of how interested you are in them. Or like, wrong. They tell you put them, the ones with the highest ATAR requirement first, because like that way, you know, by process of elimination, you'll get into the hardest course you can get into. And I didn't do that because I was like, that would have probably been medicine, say, or law. But I was like, I'm not as interested in them as I am in sports science or whatever. So sports science happened to have the lowest entry requirement of all of them. So obviously I got into it.
What was your ATAR?
Like 97 or something. Like,
fuck. Who's up to
that's not true.
It was 98.
Yeah, exactly. It was less than that. But point is, I got a good ATAR. I go into sports science, and I was doing sports science, and I was like, well, I really only applied for this because I like it. And I did like it. It was really good fun. And I had like the best mates. Like I was having the sickest time. But I was like, there's not really a career that I want to do in this.
Well, there is no... I won't say there's no careers.
You've got to want to be a sports scientist, right?
But even still...
What is a sports scientist?
Sports scientist?
Oh, fuck knows.
Like
do you know anyone?
We need Angus Bradley here. He'll tell us.
Well, we all did sports science degrees, and I don't even know a sports science.
I don't know anybody that I went to uni with that is doing quote unquote sports science other than strength and conditioning. That's the only thing that I know.
It's like they either went into EP, physio
they
after
just like use it as a springboard.
teaching.
Exactly.
It sounds like
PE teach.
So I was getting to the end of sports science, and I had to decide: I decided I was going to tack on a master's to it, and I was like, do I want to do physio or dietetics? And at the time, I was just obsessed with nutrition for myself. So I was like, well, that's interesting. I'll do that. So I got into dietetics, and when I was doing my master's, I'm not joking, I was going to drop out of my master's in like the first or second month. I remember at the time I was talking to my girlfriend at the time about it and saying, I hate this so much that I think I might just quit. And she didn't think I was serious because she knew that I was interested in nutrition, but I wasn't interested in working clinically in nutrition. They were telling us about the jobs, and honestly, it just sounded like dog shit. I didn't want to do it. And I sort of just persisted for no real reason in dietetics. And when we went through our placement arc, we had like 6 months. I worked in hospitals for 3 or 4 of those 6 months. I worked in a corporate health place where I did some basic education stuff. And I worked in a hospital doing like food service assessment stuff. It was crap.
Yeah.
I hated every second of it. And so I was like, I've done 6 months now of working kind of in this field. I hated it.
There was not a single scrap of fun.
Nothing. And like also just, I have enough of an ego that like I want to be mostly in charge of what I'm doing. And the problem is that in dietetics, like in a hospital setting, I should preface this by saying, like, with no disrespect to dietitians, but many of them would agree, in a hospital setting, you're kind of sandwiched in this role where you don't really have the power to do a lot of stuff because you can always be spoken over by the doctor. I remember and things might have changed, but I remember at the time I had patients who were like being put on diets that were specifically contraindicated, but say, the surgeon or whatever had said this person has to have a clear fluids diet. And then I'd have to call up the surgeon and say, hey, like you've put this person on a clear fluids diet. It doesn't provide enough energy for them. So like their healing's going to be compromised. And they're currently malnourished. They presented malnourished. So it's going to be bad for their health. We should probably move them to this, which will still give them, the time to recover their gut or whatever that we're looking for. Whatever the bullshit happened to be. And this person who has no qualification in nutrition could just be like, yeah, nah, dog, sorry. And particularly if you say, hey, it's Will, I'm the placement dietetics student, they're like, bro, fuck off, I'm a surgeon. And hang
That's
up.
actually
Pull the rank.
crazy.
It's bullshit. And I just fucking hated it. And I was like, unless I could actually feel like I'm steering the ship, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And so again, like, how did I get a Master of Dietetics? Pretty much by accident. And I'm still interested in nutrition, but I didn't
It's
love
completely
my
different.
masters.
The dietetics is not what most people, especially in the industry, what most people think is like a nutrition, strategy to help people and like for the general population and understanding, like that is not what dietetics is.
If I had picked a master's based on my interests from my undergrad, I probably would have done something like biochemistry because I found biochemistry great. Like it was really hard, but it's like I like thinking in systems, and biochemistry is exactly like that. And you sort of have to, it's actually a lot like the way we think about training. You can do one thing and change one output, but you've got to think of the upstream and downstream consequences of it. And it's a really satisfying thought experiment to do that. And so biochemistry is amazing.
That's a real nerd thing to say.
Yeah.
It's a real satisfying.
Well, this is going on LinkedIn, so I want to sound like I'm fucking smart for like 1 second. But when I went into dietetics, I thought that like we'd be learning about like how a carbohydrate's metabolized, and like fuck no, it's talking about dietary guidelines, a lot of talking about counseling. What's interesting is dietetics made me a fucking way better coach because like all the things you learn about clinical assessment and education and stuff are all the things that I took into coaching quite successfully, and I think influenced a lot of other people to do. But at the time, I was like, this is fucking bullshit. And it took me like a year of coaching out of uni before I was like, actually, all that shit that the dietitians were talking about would be really good practice here. But I fucking hated it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the answer is...
You did stumble in there.
Yeah, it was a complete accident.
You stumbled in there, fumbled around, stumbled out.
At the start, you said that you had a few friends that were doing some jobs that you seemed to like, and they were tackling some really big problems that you were like, that seems really interesting to me. And it started to get the ball rolling in terms of, maybe I want to leave the fitness industry. What were some of those jobs that sort of got your juices flowing?
So there's a couple that do things that are like if you read the blurb, you'd think this is cool. So one of my mates works in venture capital.
Yeah.
But specifically, the first venture capital thing he did, which was actually awesome, because he studied media before he moved into venture capital, was he worked with Shark Tank. You know that show?
Yeah, the show. I used to love that show.
So his job was to review the pitches and see which ones would
Before
make
they
good
came on.
television.
Yeah.
Not even would they
Make
not
good
even would they
business.
make
Good business.
Just would they make
You're
good
pitching
television.
a business idea to the Sharks to invest, but then it's got to be interesting for TV. So
I've never even thought that there would be a step beforehand that is, we got to pick the interesting ones.
yeah, you got to pitch to that guy
wonder what they're
before you can
blocking.
pitch to the Sharks.
I'd love to speak to that guy.
But anyway, he did that, and then he actually moved into venture capital himself.
Yeah.
And like the cool thing about venture capital is people just come to you with sick idea after sick idea, and some come with shit ideas too. But you basically get to like dip your finger in all of these really interesting industries. You get to lend your expertise to people and sort of see something that they care about grow. I think that's really, really cool. So there was that.
I might be really naive here, but I always thought venture capitalists were the people with the money.
They are with the money.
So he's got the money and he's buying...
Like if you...
Or he's finding opportunities for the...
So there will be, say, a fund. It's not necessarily just a private investor. So, there might be a fund that holds $100 million or something. And, like Jamie's shoe business comes to him and says, hey, Sharks, I got this great idea, blah, 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 blah. But the thing that I'm going to need to take it to the next level is $1 million. Yep. And then these venture capital firms invest, and then, they take some part ownership in your company, and their upside is enormous, and oftentimes their investments fail as well. Yeah. But, when they win really big.
Yeah, it's big ups.
But yeah, his job sounded really interesting. You know, I've got friends who work in journalism, and you know, the things they write about is interesting, but also just the process of like finding something out and conveying it to other people, really interesting to me. I got a bunch of friends who work in finance, some who work in law, and when you talk to the people in finance, sometimes they say things where I'm like, this sounds fucking dry. You know, it's a whole bunch of mathematical shit. Bunch of mathematical shit. Like, I can't even say it, it's that boring. Bunch of mathematical shit that sounds lame. But when you actually think about what they do on the day-to-day, they get really clear feedback on their performance. Because, like, say if you're trading or whatever, or you're making sales, you can see numerically, like, how am I performing? How am I performing as compared to yesterday? So there's very clear incentives and feedback in what you're doing. And it's the mastery of that field and developing connections with other people and feeling yourself get better at a craft that's really interesting too. And I think I'd, as well, by the end of my time in fitness, I'd sort of lost the real drive to, like, actually get better at coaching.
Yeah, well, you said it, and it's something that I felt as well, but, and it's not in an arrogant way, like the mastery of the craft, even if you don't want to develop your skill set further and go and learn new systems and learn all this sort of stuff, but the way in which you execute your systems, you've sort of nutted everything out. Is that sort of what you felt?
Yeah, basically. It was like I could nip around the edges, but I had the things that I wanted to get done, and like, it was just it for me.
I feel that a little bit sometimes with even like upskilling and education. I'm like, what do I learn next? What do I read next? And like, because I do feel like I've got a good enough grasp on it now to help a lot of people to walk in the door. And then a lot of it now, we spoke about this last week, is just learning for the sake of learning. And it doesn't feel... I don't know. It's weird.
It's weird. I've had this discussion with Tulloch a bunch, and with Carl Dobbs a couple of times as well, where like you can learn so much theory about training or whatever it happens to be, physiology, and it is fascinating in and of itself. Like, it's obviously why I ended up doing 5 or 6 years of university and still stuck it through. But like, the more you coach, the more you end up moving back towards the basics anyway. And like, the things I realized towards the end of my coaching career were that the most important things were effort, compliance, and all of the psychological stuff that drives people to train hard and love what they do. And my personal relationships with my clients mattered way more. And writing training that was feasible rather than optimal was better. And all this stuff. And it can kind of make you a bit of a nihilist about training when you think like there's so many viable ways to train, and all this shit that I've learned about optimality is maybe not as important as just making sure somebody walks in the door. It doesn't have to, because you can become obsessed with making sure that people love what they do and like maximizing their experience and all those things. And I think that's really valuable. But you also get to a point where like, well, fuck, what's the point of me learning one other little bit of minutiae if it's not actually going to shift the dial in how I train? And I did get a little bit that way as well. But I think that was also, in my instance, something that was like reflexive, because I was just trying to create space around myself because I needed a break from thinking about exercise. Like, all I ever did was think about training, and it was starting to make me feel bad. And so I would, like, I'm subscribed to MASS. I'm still subscribed to MASS. And I would get MASS research reviews, and I would read them literally just so I could make sure that there was nothing wrong in my mentorship. But I took no joy in learning anything new from reading it, whereas it used to be that I would get things like that and be like, fuck, I want to know every little bit of this. Even if it doesn't matter, I just want to know because it's cool to know. By the end, it wasn't. And so for me to be able to say, well, it doesn't really matter if, you know, there's some conflicting information out there, because at the end of the day, like, it's still about training hard and showing up. Like, that's true. But that was really just a defense mechanism for me, you know?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point, because I definitely, this chat is just resonating with me. Yeah, absolutely resonating
Melbourne
with me.
strength culture, you know, just 2015 to 2022.
Yeah, like the way it's evolved, like, holy shit.
Nah, we're doing it. We got to...
You guys, honestly, I think you do it so right. You know, I say I miss that sense of community. And one of the things I think you guys have got, like, the sickest is both within your gym. It just looks like a fun place to be.
It is fun.
But, you know, you're hanging out with the boys and having fun day by day. Like, I was sitting in my place on my own, just talking to a computer screen. It's different.
Yeah,
you know?
I know exactly how you feel, because one did that through lockdown, but I still work from home. But like, say Monday morning, I get up to do my check-ins. I work from home for a few hours. I then get up and go to the gym for a meeting, see the ball. It breaks it up.
Yeah.
And we've got those other options to go to the gym. We do the internship. We go in and coach a couple of hours. we do these bloody podcasts, these YouTube videos, these trips, and it does break it up and break that staleness up. Because if I had to sit in my little office by myself every single day, it'd be tough. It'd be hard. Because
the other thing though is every bit of work that you do, you're also working as part of a team. Like, you know, you've got your mates on board, and you know that if you drop the ball, then that's going to cost them. And when you do something that's good for you, it's also good for them. And so everybody shares in that success. You know, and I think that there's something really important about feeling like what you're doing serves something bigger than yourself. And that again really wore at me is by the end, like obviously it served my clients, but I didn't really feel like I was making anybody's life better other than my own when I got paid.
Yeah, it kind of circles all the way back to that whole lift thing. Like you would have had that community there. And even though you guys weren't in business together, there's still that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, like
matters.
just
your colleagues matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially the people that were there, because it was I would say the hub of. It was such a sad day when that happened. I'd love to. I don't know if you know that. We probably won't talk about it now, but just how that all just happened, just collapsed on itself.
I mean, I could give you some. Yeah, I could give you some conjecture, but I'm not going to say it on the podcast because it's conjecture.
Yeah. What else have you been doing? I see you back in the band. You've been playing some.
So that's the sickest thing, actually, is my LinkedIn says professional musician.
Fucking oath it does.
No, it doesn't. I wish it did. Yeah, look, so that's actually no joke, though. The only money I've made since January has been through gigs. So in a sense, I'm a professional musician.
You are probably in amongst the bell curve of professional
musicians. Yeah, well, none of them get paid well, and I certainly don't. So I've been playing with the band. One of the first things I did after I quit was go on a holiday. I had to...
Oh, tell us Sri Lanka. The story of the terrorists.
Oh, fucking hell, yeah. Okay, so I went to Sri Lanka, and spoiler alert, terrorists. There wasn't actually terrorists, but we didn't know. So what happened is...
This is actually fucked.
Yeah, I forgot that I'd told you about
this. Yeah, you did. You I think you DM voice messaged me or something. But tell me what you would do in this situation, Charles. You big bloody strong chock. Tell me what you'd do.
I'm keen.
So,
keen to hear.
I've got to remember the details of this. So my third night in Sri Lanka, I was in this little beach town called Hikkaduwa, and you basically just go there and surf and hang out. And I was staying on this hostel that backed onto the beach, and about 2 or 3 blocks down from us was this beachfront bar called Mambo's. And on a Saturday night, they have live music and then a party. And so I had gone there with a few people that I'd met just to have some drinks and shit. And we'd hung around till, 10:30 or 11. And because I was still operating on Sydney time, I was really tired at like 11 o'clock. So I decided to go home. And I went back to my dorm room. I was staying in like a 10 or 12 bed dorm. And I was asleep, and I just got woken up to like this crashing noise and people screaming in my room. All the lights are on. And so I just sat up, and it was all these like young kids. They would have been 18 to 20 years old. And I just sat up and said, shut the fuck up, and turned the light off. Because like I was there to sleep. Like I was grumpy as fuck.
Shut the fuck up.
Seriously, son. I said, shut the fuck up. And anyway, this Dutch kid looks at me, and he was so sincere and so affronted that I would tell him to shut up. He said, there has been a terrorist attack and we are in life danger. He says, life danger. And so I was immediately like, oh, fuck, there's been a terrorist attack. I'm in my fucking boxer shorts. So
shut the fuck up
and turn the lights off. So anyway, they're all screaming. People are on their phones and shit. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I've gotten down from my bed and I'm trying to ask him, what's happened. And they're all hysterical. And I've walked outside and there's more people like running around the hostel. And it was pretty crazy. So anyway, finally bailed somebody up and said, what's happened? And at around 12:30, a whole bunch of armed men had turned up. They'd poured gasoline around the front of this bar and lit it on fire so that people couldn't run out onto the beach. And then had run through the bar, and they had machetes and baseball bats that they were swinging at people. And the place was packed. There was hundreds and hundreds of people in it. And they basically chased this crowd out onto the streets, and they'd been chasing people up and down the streets, swinging machetes and baseball bats and shit at them. And the reason why this Dutch kid said that he was in life danger was because he had filmed one of the guys hitting someone with a machete. And he said that it was like a local mafia terrorist group or some shit that were going to find him because it had gotten on social media and some shit like that. And I was like, oh, damn. So anyway, he told me that, and they'd basically chased all these people out of the bar. And I was thinking when he's saying people are being hit with baseball bats and machetes that there's going to be like fatalities, like blood everywhere and stuff. But all this guy knew was that one girl had broken her leg and had to go to hospital. And it was all just sounding a bit iffy. And while all this is happening, there were a couple of staff from my hostel around, and they were really blasé about it, even though we're 50 metres from the site, by the way.
Was it still on fire?
No. So nothing's going on. And by this stage, it's like after 1. Not much is going on, but all my staff at the hostel were really blasé about it. They didn't seem to give a shit. And I was like, something about this is not adding up, but it's still pretty fucked. And like everyone's scary. So I've just messaged my parents, like, there's been some type of attack near us. Like, everything's pretty fucked. And go back to my room, and they barricaded the door shut in my room. So they let me back in once I could convince them that it's Will and not the terrorist, right? So I go back to my room. We've barricaded the door shut, and everybody's sitting on one bunk bed, and they just happen to fucking choose the one beneath mine. So, like, I couldn't go back to sleep again if I wanted to.
You just went back in there, shut the fuck up, turn the lights.
Yeah. The fuck off my bed.
So there's this group of 4 English chicks, right? And one of them's on the phone to her mum, and mum's on loudspeaker. And so this chick's going, like, there's been a terrorist attack. They were chasing us. There's machetes, all this shit. And the mum goes, and the girl's saying they're still out on the streets and all this stuff. The mum says, are there any adults there? And this girl goes, oh, there's a big Aussie guy on the bunk above us. If they break in, he'll fight them for us. And I've let down on my bunk and what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I'm the only one here who wasn't at the bar. Like, you guys are on your fucking own. So anyway, at this point I was like, fuck, we're having a sleepless night. It's, getting towards 2 a.m. or whatever. And like, everyone's just, on high alert. So I was like, cool. So I go down and sit on the bed with these chicks. And we're sitting there and some guy's beating on the door. And again, like, after a bit of back and forth, we realise he's definitely not Sri Lankan. We let him in and he's one of the Dutch guy's friends and he can't find his friends. And so I was like, all right, well, you might as well stay here for the night then because, like, none of us are sleeping, just chill out. And he goes, no, I need to go find my friends. And he says, will you come out with me? And I was like, come out where? And he goes, go find my friends. I'm in my boxers still, by the way. Boxers on, no T-shirt. And I go, sure, all right. So we walk out, and this guy starts, like, Mission Impossible, like, crawling around, like, commando crawling, like, opening doors, like, by pushing the door and following it through and, like, looking around it and shit, like, full on, like, a super spy. By the way, at this point, you couldn't, like, there was no one around. I was still, like, obviously quite scared, but just thinking this whole situation's so surreal. So I'm just plodding along behind him while he's, like, fucking, like, literally Tom Cruise around the hostel looking for his mates. Anyway, we ended up not finding them, came back to our room, and we all fell asleep for the night. And I woke up the next morning at, like, I don't know, 7 or something, and everybody else in the room is just, like, sitting there. So I went for a surf because I thought, like, nothing's happening, like, and it could only do me good. And I went out in the water and spoke to this British expat, and I got sort of the full story of what had happened, which is that Mambo's was owned by a local drug dealer who was having beef with another drug dealer who owned a bunch of the other bars. And they were having beef specifically because on that night, Mambo had been basically bringing all of the tourists to himself by having the live music night.
Dirty dog. And
so this guy had basically just wanted to ruin his business by having this attack. And so people who worked at all the other bars in this town had been told, don't go to Mambo's that night. So everybody knew that something was up, which is why the staff at my hostel didn't care and also knew that it was just a matter between Mambo's and this. So then this guy told me, that girl broke her leg and went to hospital. Nobody else was injured because they were just smacking people on the arse with their machetes. They weren't hitting them. And, like, none of this to say is that it wasn't scary or anything, by the way. Like, it was obviously a very big deal. But they basically had gone in and just cleared everybody out of the bar, scared the fuck out of them. And they did scare the fuck out of them because everybody who was there was talking about it for weeks after. And then they just, like, ripped every speaker off the wall, broke every bottle in the place, set everything on fire, like, destroyed the venue. But it was all just a beef between these two businesses. And I was like, fuck, I kind of feel a little bit silly now.
Yeah.
But at the time, like that night was so frightening.
Absolutely.
You know, I was considering flying out of Sri Lanka the next day when I genuinely thought it was a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
But by the time I was, playing second fiddle to Tom Cruise, I'd sort of gotten over it. I was done.
Plotting around.
Yeah,
like the cameraman behind him, just like, what the fuck's going on?
It was so surreal. Anyway, fucking bizarre times. So that was my holiday get over my burnout. I'm like, imagine that as like my career's gone to shit, go to Sri Lanka and I end up in a fucking terrorist attack. Like some people have no luck.
But is it Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events?
Yeah,
Will Berkman.
Nah, it was all right. Like, honestly, after that, the holiday got better.
Yeah.
As you'd expect. But
You'd hope so. I was going to say, were the people back at Mambo's the next night, but obviously not. They just
no,
fucking
the
trashed
place
it.
was fucked. It was, no, the crazy thing is apparently shit like that actually happens fairly regularly.
Yeah, some
but
of
the
those
locals
countries
just don't talk about it.
Some of those countries, man, they're literally just crime runs them, and there's areas or certain industries that crime is just in charge. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The Tom Wilson basketball in Serbia.
Oh yeah, we had. I don't know if you listened to it. Tom Wilson, it's episode 11 maybe. He's currently playing AFL for Collingwood, but he played for the Australian Boomers, and his first pro contract was with a Serbian club. Do you remember what it was called?
Belgrade.
Belgrade or whatever.
Belgrade.
But it's the whole.
Isn't that the capital?
Yeah, so it'd be that team. I can't remember the
basketball team, and it's like it's connected with the soccer club or something, and the whole club is run by the mob.
Yeah.
And he didn't get paid, and they promised him like he was going to be living in this house or whatever, and he was just like in this shitty apartment with no natural light.
So I heard a story from Johnny. He was asking me, wanted us to press on it more. One of my good mates. He goes, so it's run by the mob, and there's like an older group, and there was this younger group trying to take over. And the older group basically went into the stadium, grabbed all the kids, ripped them naked, and made them walk around the stadium naked in front of everyone. Because we're still the bosses. Fuck off.
Oh, the old mobsters.
The old mobsters.
Oh, the young mobsters.
I thought you meant actual kids. And I was like, that's a fucking weird statement.
No, not the kids. So there was like obviously a younger group of the hooligans that were trying to take over. Would have been, let's say, 25 years old, whatever, and then older group that fucking
the 40, the 50-year-olds,
and they fucking stripped them naked and made them walk around in front of everyone like shame walk.
I mean, that'd work.
It's
they
fucked
say,
over
when
there.
you're public speaking, if you need to sort of bring your audience down a little bit, imagine them naked. Yeah,
naked.
The point where
It's like a shameful thing. It's like
100%.
In front of everyone. It's Australia's. We've got it. We're lucky. Like our country's
absolutely
pretty damn safe.
Western world, yeah.
Man.
Safe and.
Sri Lanka, I mean, now they're having like real economic crises, right?
Yeah.
You were also saying there was like petrol crisis or something.
Yeah, so that got worse after we left. But at the time I was there, they were, because all of their power is generated by like just big diesel generators, right? And their currency had tanked because they'd done a whole bunch of inflationary stuff, I think, during COVID. And the petrol price went up because I was there when the Russia-Ukraine invasion happened. Also, Sri Lanka is filled with Russians, so that was like heaps awkward.
Heaps awkward.
But anyway, they hit this perfect storm of their currency's worth nothing and they can't afford the petrol because it's getting more expensive. So they couldn't generate power. So we were having like 8 hours a day of power outages, and it's like so fucking hot and humid. So when you can't turn a fan on, it's like pretty miserable.
Fucked.
But you would walk into supermarkets and like the meat fridge, say, has had no power for 8 hours. It's like 30 degrees and it stinks. But petrol as well was nearly impossible to get. So we had a hire scooter that we just walked back to the place and returned it because we couldn't put petrol in it. But people were walking with jerry cans to the service station, and people would line up their jerry can, and you'd see just lines of jerry cans going like 50 meters down the street, and they would just hold their place in the line, and it would take 7 to 8 hours to fill it up. Sometimes people would actually have to sit there if they were like driving a truck or something, literally sit there in their truck, and then they might get to a service station and they were out of fuel and they couldn't get any more. So the whole country was grinding to a halt when we left. And so I had that exact same thought. I was like, fuck, I'm so lucky to be from Australia.
That's crazy.
It's such a shame.
Sometimes it's not to see it firsthand really puts a good perspective on it. Because we were sitting here complaining when petrol was $2.25, but like you could still just roll up, put it in your car, and leave within 2 minutes.
Crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, you asked me what I've been doing.
Well, that was it.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't answer that one.
Yeah.
The weekly weights training did you well.
Yeah, man. I went on a holiday, and then since, other than job applications, and that took a long time to even start because I just wanted a break.
You've been doing Super Smash Bros.
A lot of Super Smash Bros. I was going to say I've been going to the gym and surfing heaps because like that's a bit more on brand, which is true also.
Yeah, but you're not a fitness guy anymore. You're just Will Berkman.
You know I'm not a fitness guy. I think I told you this as well because like a week or two after I quit, I was at Bondi Fitness First. I'm like, I used to coach a bunch of the personal trainers there. And some new PT walks in. He's like 70 kilos dripping wet. And I'm deadlifting. I'm like warming up. And he comes up and I had like 200 kilos on the bar or something, 220. And he offered me help. He said, do you want a spot first? And I was like, no, thank you. And then he offered
deadlift.
Then he offered me some pointers, and I was like, "Fuck, have I already become that much of a normie?" Like, I was like, it hurt me
Already
so
forgotten.
much. I was like, "Oh no!"
And just like that, the chapter closed.
Yeah, I was like, "Fuck, I'm gonna have to get used to this when I'm working in finance." Yeah, I've been doing a lot of Super Smash Brothers as well.
You're like a commentator or something. What is this?
Yeah,
You wear a
so-
suit and you do streams and you commentate.
Yeah, so this was actually something that started in lockdown. So my mate Brandon, who I met at Lyft, and then he moved to Steed as well, he's a real gamer. And I basically bullied him into starting playing Smash because I got a couple of like my oldest childhood mates, and those guys are gym rats, and we play Nintendo together, and those are the things we've been doing since we were like kids.
Yeah.
And I basically bullied Brandon into starting playing Smash as well because I just wanted somebody else to play the game with. And we got quite into it, and we actually went to a tournament about a week before lockdown because we just thought it'd be fun. And it was a fucking weird experience because we had no idea who anybody was. And it's the opposite of going to a fitness expo.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like really similar. It's like the dark reflection
It's
of
a
fitness
niche.
expo. It's a niche.
It's just a niche. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was fun. And I was like, fuck, I want to do a bit more of this. And anyway, lockdown comes along. And during lockdown, people were running online tournaments for Smash. And they were kind of fun, but like they're just not that much fun because people will broadcast the game and people will commentate over them. But like the commentary is a bit dry and the game's really good fun to watch, but it's just like not much of a spectacle. And Brandon and I had this thought of like, we could just do this, but make it way more fun.
Yeah.
In the same way that like you guys make content and you try and like cloud it up, we were like, why don't we just do it, but just do it better?
Yeah.
And so we started running tournaments ourselves, and we ran them every sort of like 3-ish weeks for the whole of lockdown, and then continued after. And by the end, we were like the most popular tournament series in Australia. And we would dress in suits.
Stumbled into it.
Seriously, we would dress in suits and get pissed as fuck while we were commentating because like you got nothing to do. It's lockdown, so we're there on like a Saturday afternoon or whatever, just like slamming grog, talking shit. And by the way, it's important to note we're both really bad.
Yeah.
So like when other people talk about the game, they've got like an educated opinion. We've got no idea. We're just two dudes getting pissed. But people loved it because we were obviously having such a good time, and we just
That's
say
half of
outrageous
it, man.
stuff.
All that stuff is.
Yeah, well, you guys have a good time. That's why people.
No, it's
wanna
literally
be
like
what you're doing.
lockdowns. I started watching Dr. Disrespect.
Yeah,
And literally, he's playing these games against legit pros, but he's got the biggest following. Not that he might not have the biggest following, but quite often he's the biggest streamer
100%.
in the thing or whatever. And you just much rather watch his shit because he's just so funny, so entertaining. The way he's charismatic, and it's like it's got nothing to do with how good he's still better than the average person. But
Yeah.
it's fucking so much fun just watching him just do his thing.
Yeah, and that's what we realized quickly. And like we started making content and things, and like from the first, we called ourselves Orb because Brandon and I used to have official ratings boys, the Instagram. Do you remember that? Yeah. So people who don't know about that, I had my old lab coats from uni, and so Brandon and I used to just put on the lab coats and then just sit there and like just talk complete shit about our opinions about random shit. So we'd like rate breakfast cereals or like. You know, whatever it happened to be, and we just made ourselves out to be like really scientific and intelligent because we had a lab coat on, but it was bullshit. And so we named our tournaments Orb. And from the very first Orb, we were talking about ourselves as a major tournament, the biggest and most important in Australia. All this shit, like we just invented all this lore about ourselves, how we were being invited to the States and things to commentate other ones. We made like fuck, I wrote a rap at one stage that we made a music video to that people were sharing. We were making skits every time we had a tournament coming along. We'd be fucking getting in costumes and like, you know, just doing dumb shit like publicity stunts. I wrote to the Sydney Football Stadium Trust to ask if we could run our tournament there.
Yeah.
Because we were like, our last tournament had 50 people, and if it keeps growing at this rate, the next one might have 40 to 45,000, and you're the only place around here that could sit us. I have a response from the SFS Stadium Trust asking me to get on the phone with them.
No way.
Yeah, because they were like, oh, we'd like to hear more about your event. So we were just doing the dumbest publicity stunts the whole time, and we just got really popular.
Yeah.
To the point where Brandon was streaming regularly, and he's now got like a modest following, but enough to earn him some pocket money. He actually did go to the States for 6 weeks recently. Unreal. And was paid to commentate Super Smash Brothers when he was there. But it all literally started from us just being 100%. Like, fuck, we're bored in lockdown. And so, yeah, I've been doing a whole bunch of that. And like, you know, we'll still go to events and things. People always want us to commentate. We've made a whole bunch of really good mates in the community because like, there's some fucking legends in it.
100%.
And, you know, it's just like fitness. Like, you meet people, you have something in common, and, like, you know, they're
just
good
have
value.
fun.
Yeah, we just have fun. And so now Orb is the most popular tournament series in Australia.
That's unreal. That's
Yeah,
actually so fucking cool. I love it. Number one in the hearts, number one on the charts. I was just thinking that at the end. Like, that's literally what we're trying to do with this fucking podcast.
Yeah, but again, like, it's if you have the most fun, the people will come.
Yeah, literally.
I was saying to you, this was like before we started
backdrop.
recording. You cold?
No, I'm just, I'm just thinking, like, this is what we're fucking.
We opened up the fucking things and I was like, get this nice backdrop.
This podcast, I'm like, why the fuck are we doing this? Like, this is exactly why we're doing it.
But yeah, people just like. This is what I was saying to you before we started recording. Like, everybody wants to be taken seriously in what they do. They want to be respected. Like, people want to know that you're credible. But the thing that really resonates with them is that you're having a good time. And, like, ultimately, almost nothing is that serious. And when I think back to why I did so well in fitness, one of the main things was that people just seemed to like me. You know, like, if I think back to my Instagram account, the content that I'm most proud of is none of the informative captions, even the ones that I thought were good. It was like, you know, when I used to dress up as Bill Workman and shit, like I would do that stuff. I'd get 100 times more engagement, or I'd write a dumb song for a client or whatever it happened to be. Like, people who were just able to say, oh, fuck, it's actually fun to do fitness. And this is why I say you guys have done it so well with everything that you do in your branding. People who just look at it and say, that's fun and I want to be involved, are the people that you want to work with.
100%.
And like, your business blows up from it, you know? Like, yeah, it's so important to have a good time and to show people who you are. Like, Charlie, I told you this on the old Melbourne Strength Culture podcast, where I remember, like, when my books first started getting, like, pretty full at Lyft, I did a client survey because I was like, I want to know why people are working with me, because I don't want to waste my... Like, I was writing all these articles for my website at the time, and I stopped after a while because I was like, I don't think I'm getting many clients from this. I think I'm just impressing other coaches. And so I was asking my clients, like, hey, why'd you start working with me? And I'm thinking, is it my Instagram? Is it like watching my own training? Is it, you know, whatever? Is it an article I wrote? Is it weekly weights? And it was like 70% of people mentioned my dog. They were all like, man, Digby. Yeah, they were like, man, like, you've got this dog, Digby, he's so fucking funny. And like, you just seem like a fun dude. Like, I know you play guitar and stuff. And I'm like, well, you came to me for like specialist powerlifting coaching.
This is Jamie B, man. As soon as Jamie B put this fucking Choco, whatever the hell he's doing, he did it at the start of the year, and I could not believe the amount of leads he was getting. It was just absurd. And he just springboarded, like nearly doubled his client list in like a 2-month period. And he was doing this fat pillow face filter thing. It was just like, what is going on?
But it blew up.
And then like, every Monday, he'd be like, yeah, 4 people last week. I got 3 calls this week. I'm like,
I've had the most interactions with people in the last month because I've been talking about smoking meat.
Really?
Messages. And like people, like, they'll put up a fucking thing of the charcoal starting up and like, here we go again. And people will message me and be like, send me updates throughout the cook. Like, just everyone's so fascinated in that. And I've been trying to write all this, you know, same as you, content. Oh, I'm going to talk about train. No one gives a shit.
Mate, you're actually going to fucking laugh. What happened yet? We're gonna tell the story.
Yeah,
again.
tell it.
This will be the last thing.
No, it's just well, it'll come out on Beth.
Thoughts to do with that, but
it's on Beth.
So for years, Melbourne Strength Culture, we've been trying to make this informative, like you said, the evolution of what we've done. Like, we used to do all this informative content, seminars, CDP, all of this. We were trying to position ourselves.
J-curve in the bench press.
Yeah, but it's still important stuff, and it's still you need it. But last 3 or 4 months, we're just like, no, let's pivot to this fun side, charismatic. Let's just try to have fun. People will ride along with it because it's just interesting, and we're just doing things differently. Yeah. So the first piece of content that goes viral is buddy Luke Lehman. No, it's all right. Oh, you might have seen it, but Luke Lehman goes viral, 1.6 million on TikTok, and we get 4,000 TikTok followers in 2 days. And we're like, man,
I did watch that, yeah.
Then it went viral on Instagram. It had 700,000 views as a reel. His second one's at 500,000. And as a result, our Instagram page grew like nearly 2,000 followers in like a month as like an afterflow of that. Eugene Teo also definitely sparked it. Like that was a huge one for us. Yeah. And then it all sort of like died down. And we had grown like 15 to 1,600 in about 30 days. And that sort of washed away. And then I messaged Donnie and I'm like, Donnie, we need something else to go viral. And he's like, oh, we'll see if we can find anything. And about a day later, he posts this video
we got to show him.
He posts this video on
Catch. Oh, yeah, no, this was funny as fuck.
Wait, it gets better. So 447,000 on TikTok. Yeah. On Facebook, it got liked by, it's at like 20-something thousand, but it got shared 1,000 times on Instagram, sorry. And then Charlie had a nap yesterday and woke up and he had 65 new followers on his personal account. And we're like,
that.
No, wait. And we're like, what the fuck just happened? And he's like, I don't know what's going on. And then he checks his email. Someone's emailed him. And says like, hey man, just want to let you know you're such a good looking man.
There you go. I'm not on TikTok or Instagram. I found it on Twitter. So someone reshared it to Twitter. So then Donnie goes, ask for the link for them. So I go, can you please send me the link to Twitter? So they send it. And we jump on, and it's been retweeted like how many?
16 at the time, 1,600 times. It's now gone to over 600,000 on Twitter. We didn't even post it, and it's all Brazilian gay dudes.
So
really? He's just got
my Instagram following went up by about
400 Brazilian gay dudes sending him DMs and stuff, and it's like
it's all in Spanish. And I've had my Instagram went up 300 in the last 2 days, and I've got like at the moment I've still got like 20 requests and hidden requests. Messages from like Brazilian dudes.
That's unreal.
Gay Brazilian dudes.
It's just like for years. Not to say that we're going to be able to like that's not going to help our brand in any way, but it's like for years we've been trying to make all this like really, and some of it has made a really big impact on the industry, 100%. Yeah. But it's like these two, just like Luke Lehman's fucking drug trend talk making cattle pallet fucking testosterone, and then this thing that went viral in Brazil. Charlie is now an Adonis.
But the comments that all
getting
getting
the new age Ricky Martin.
The comments were like, "Oh, can he please spot me like that?" Like just the one was, "Oh, lock out with your cock out," and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?"
But the crazy thing, like, I mean, that's silly, but fucking great.
It's fun.
No, like, if I was to give anyone advice, like for a fitness career, probably one of my like top 3 things would be just be authentic and have fun.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
Like, it's the most important thing you can do to connect with people. And, like, you know, the fact you share shit like that and have a laugh, you know, resonates with people. Because, like, shit like that happens,
it's
you know?
funny as fuck. It's one of the funniest things that I think it is the funniest thing that's ever happened at our business.
You're the perfect person to have it happen to, by the way.
It's so funny
because you're the most mellow guy.
For so long, he's not against social media, but he just generally doesn't enjoy social media. But the last 24 hours, he's like, I've got to make more posts. I got to fucking dopamine.
I got addicted to seeing my followers go up like that because I was checking them at dinner with Angus Bradley. I'm like, another 20 followers. 10 minutes later, another 25 followers.
Bro,
and I'm
don't
like,
go to Fitness First Bondi. There's so many Brazilian dudes that get recognised, man.
Unbelievable.
It was the whole thing, but yeah. Apparently, I don't know the way I smiled at the end.
It's
at
the
end.
face he made. Apparently,
the cheeky face.
Because the guy that I was spotting, like when you know him, he's very like he'll make jokes like that all the time, and I just knew I'm like he's gonna say something. He loved it. He laughed. He was like, "It's fucking hilarious." He's like, "My ass has brushed your cock," and then so I laughed, and then but it's just the whole thing.
Yeah. Incredible.
So then we're like, can we recreate it? But I think it's candid.
No, you can't recreate it. Just let it go.
No,
just let it run.
Moment.
But it's so funny that it went the most viral on a random Twitter page in Mexico.
We were losing it. We were in here. We could not believe it.
Oh, so
I still haven't responded to that guy from LA. Eric from LA. Loved me. Send me a screenshot. You got to see this.
He said, we'll wrap it up there, but we'll thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me. That's a good time.
What I'll say is if you've they send it,
that was in the Twitter tweets. The
Wait,
photo of me.
they found that on your Instagram.
And someone put this in the comments on Twitter.
Like, oh man, it's so funny.
I mean, you do look good there.
That day was in Melbourne. It was like 40 degrees.
It's so fucking funny
was
that
hot.
fitness people can remember to the day, the time that they looked good in the photo.
Oh.
Like no other fucking population on earth. Is like,
That's why we
was
were all,
my hottest day ever.
well. That's why we were all topless because it was like a sauna in the gym. It was just hot as fuck. And anyway, come back to haunt me.
I was just gonna say
on Brazilian gay Twitter.
I was just going to say right at the end, if you're following along and you need a generalist who's quite intelligent and a strapping, handsome young man,
This doesn't go on LinkedIn.
we've got the guy for you. And if you're looking for an absolute stud muffin, Charlie's your guy. We're done. Ciao. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.